Hey there, folks. John here, and this is my new installment of my video blog. The other day, the Golden Globes was on, and there's a lot of controversy going around about Ricky Gervais and the job that he did, and it looks like the Hollywood Foreign Press, the people behind the Golden Globes, aren't going to have him back anymore. And a lot of people are talking about this, and I wanted to weigh in with my 2 cents worth for what it's worth. Now, before I go into it, there's 2 things you need to know. Number 1, I am a massive Ricky Gervais fan. I watched all the episodes of the original Office before anybody else thought it was cool. I've seen just about everything the guy has done. I love his stand-up comedy. Hell, I think I'm one of the only people in the world who actually like that movie of his, Ghost Town. And I don't even think he likes that movie. And I did. Big fan of Ricky Gervais. Thrilled with the job he did at the Golden Globes last year. And as a fan and as a viewer, I was really entertained watching him host the Golden Globes again this year. I even listened to his podcast now and again. So I'm a big Ricky Gervais fan, and I am still a big Ricky Gervais fan. The second thing you need to know before we go into this is that for years, I'm not just some bandwagoner here. You can check back on my old site, the movie blog, articles going back years. I hate the Golden Globes. I think they're a joke. I write at least 2 articles about how it's a joke every year. You can look back on this as much as you want. I think this is a terrible, terrible show. I do not know why Hollywood gives this show by the Hollywood Foreign Press, comprised of about less than 100 people, why we give it the importance that it's given. I hate the Golden Globes. So point number 1, I love Ricky Gervais. Point number 2, I hate the Golden Globes. But there is no doubt, if you want to put emotionalism and fanaticism aside and you want to look at it strictly logically and with a clear head and objectively, Ricky Gervais deserves to get fired from the Golden Globes, and he shouldn't be invited back again next year to do it again. And here's why. Like I said before, I as a fan, as somebody sitting at home who's detached from what's going on, I was hugely entertained by Ricky Gervais. I thought he was really funny. I laughed at just about everything. I mean, I would love to watch him on the show again next year. The problem is, it's not my show. And I'm not the one who hired him to do it. And I'm not the one he humiliated during the show. The Hollywood Foreign Press is. Now, there's no denying, Gervais really did humiliate the Hollywood Foreign Press. I loved it. But he did. There's no denying. He humiliated them. And he pretty much discredited them, too. On their own show, he discredited them. Now, there are some people who have made the following false arguments to me about it. False argument number 1. Well, when they hired Ricky Gervais, they should have known what they were getting. That's not a legitimate argument. Because, yeah, you do kind of have a basic understanding of what they're getting. As a matter of fact, the Hollywood Foreign Press had more than a basic understanding because they had him on the show last year. And sure, he did some jiving and some whatever. The other complaint that I hear people saying is, you got to expect a little bit of roasting. Sure, like I said, the Hollywood Foreign Press had Gervais hosting the show last year, and he did do roasting. He did poke at people and all that kind of stuff. But there is no denying that what he did at this show, which I thought was hilarious, what he did with this year's show was on a completely other level. He took it up to a completely different level. So you see, the Hollywood Foreign Press, yeah, they knew what they're getting with Gervais because they had him last year. They thought they were going to get kind of the same level of stuff, and he took it to an entirely new level. There's no debating that. Everybody understands that. The second false argument that people can kind of be summed up like this is that since when is telling the truth going too far? And in humiliating the Hollywood Foreign Press, I'm going to say right up, Gervais was telling the truth. He was absolutely telling the truth. But remember, this isn't an issue about telling the truth. It's not like some reporter went up to Ricky Gervais in the street and said, hey, can we get you for an interview? And in that interview, he told the truth. Or on one of his own podcasts where he decided to tell the truth. This is a different entity altogether. The Hollywood Foreign Press's biggest and only relevant night of the year is the Golden Globes. That is their big event. That is their, thing that they count down to every year. It is their Christmas. It is their bar mitzvah. It is their big thing. And they invited and paid Ricky Gervais to come and be a part of that, to help celebrate the night and all that kind of stuff. And they expected a little bit of roasting, a little bit of jabbing like he did last year. But instead, he came in on their most important night of the year, discredited them, humiliated them, raked them over the coals pretty badly. Once again, something I found hilarious and I would love to see again next year. But it wasn't me he was roasting and humiliating when I was paying him. Think of it this way. Put it in this analogy. Let's say your name's Bob and it's your wedding and you invite a guy to be your best man, or forget best man, to be the MC at your wedding reception. Your most important day, your wedding reception. You have spent all your life savings on the wedding and the wedding reception, and you invite this guy who you know and you've been associated with before to come and be the MC. Of course you expect a little bit of roasting and a little bit of jabs, but let's say that the guy who's your MC now comes out and he just rips you. He reveals things about you that you thought were going to be kept secret. He calls you out on things you did in the past that aren't funny. Then, there's funny roasting, but just completely humiliates you in front of your family, your friends, your new wife, the whole thing. Let's say you invite him into your house for your birthday, your big celebration of the year. He shows up with no present and then stands up in front of everybody, stops the proceedings of your birthday party, and starts to reveal things about you or bring up things about you and just embarrasses you and humiliates you. There are two things you're going to do that you and I would both do. Number one, you're going to kick the living shit out of him, especially if it's the whole wedding scenario. Number two, after you're done kicking the shit out of him, you're going to throw him out of your house. That's what you would do. And here's the thing. I find a little bit of hypocrisy in people who are saying, oh, everything Ricky Gervais is doing, Hollywood Foreign Press not inviting him back, that's them overreacting, blah, blah, blah. That's pure hypocrisy. Because if it was you and if it was me, we would damn well do the same thing, except we would also kick the shit out of him before throwing him out. That's what we would do. And even though I loved what Gervais did, and I was very entertained by it, and I think he was absolutely right with everything he said, if I'm not going to be a hypocrite, I have to admit, you know what? If I was in the shoes of the Hollywood Foreign Press, I would have been humiliated. I would have been upset. He ruined our big night from their point of view. And we're not going to invite him back. To suggest otherwise is pure hypocrisy. Now, that's why I think, and look, I'm going for it. Remember, I loved what Gervais did, and I can't wait to see what he does next. But I understand why it won't be with the Hollywood Foreign Press or with the Golden Globes. Now, if the first part of my thing here is about why Ricky Gervais deserved to get fired from the Golden Globes, the second thing has to be why the Hollywood Foreign Press, and I hate to go off on this again, and the Golden Globes deserved everything they got from them. This award show is a complete joke, okay? Now, I've said this 1,000 times before. You look at something like the Oscars, roughly 7,000 voting members of the Academy. 7,000. When you have a huge voting base like that, it protects you from a lot of things. But also, these voters aren't just the average people on the street. They're filmmakers, they're actors, they're directors, they're cinematographers, they're writers, they're critics. There are other people involved, agents, whatever, involved in the whole scheme of the Academy. People from every walk of life within the filmmaking community and outside of it. It's an impressive, very divergent group voting base that brings, I think, a lot of legitimacy to the Oscars, even if I don't always agree with it. The Golden Globes, however, is voted on by the Hollywood Foreign Press, which is approximately, the last time I checked, about 90 film critics who live in LA but write for foreign publications. If I have that right. I could be oversimplifying that, but generally that's the gist. And here's the thing. You have something like a best comedy or musical film. Okay, I'm not completely against the idea of having separate categories for best movies. I'm okay with that. But their history on what they've put into best comedy or musical has been a joke, and I won't go over it all again, but it's always been a joke. But this year especially, I'm sorry, you have 3 films that you've put up for best picture in the musical and category, a title that says Best Picture in it. You have The Tourist. On Rotten Tomatoes, it has a 20% rating. You have Burlesque. On Rotten Tomatoes, a 37% rating. You have Alice in Wonderland, which was a horrible film, has a 52% rating. Horrible films. These movies are nominated for a Best Picture award. Give me a break. Meanwhile, you had other comedies this year, like Easy A, an 86% rating. Kick-Ass, a 77% rating, if I'm not mistaken, and Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, an 81% rating. None of these get nominated for that Best Picture category because none of them have any super major stars. The Tourist Has Johnny Depp and Angelina Jolie, the Hollywood Foreign Press, want to make sure Johnny Depp and Angelina Jolie are there? Nominate this awful, terrible film for a Best Picture award. This organization is a joke. And then to compound the problem, right after that, MTV was interviewing one of the voting members. Remember, there's only about 90 of them. One of the voting members said, any movie he ever makes, talking about Ricky Gervais, never get nominated. Now, some people have said to me, but John, that wasn't the whole Hollywood Foreign Press saying that. That was just one guy. Well, guess what? One guy is 1 out of 90. And it's clear that the Hollywood Foreign Press engages in collusion when coming up with who they're going to make their nominees by nominating The Tourist to make sure Johnny Depp and Angelina Jolie and Brad Pitt are going to be there. Alice in Wonderland, again with Johnny Depp, and for whatever reason, Burlesque, maybe to justify calling it musical. It was the only musical they had in the whole thing. Obviously, the Hollywood Foreign Press engages in collusion when coming up with what they're going to nominate. There's collusion there. It isn't by blind ballot. And so if that kind of collusion is already there, of course, one guy, 1 out of 90, not 1 out of 7,000, 1 out of 90. If he's saying that, you bet there's talk about it and there's going to be collusion. And just because they didn't like what Ricky Gervais did, they're going to throw away their artistic credibility and say, even if he makes the best film of the year, we're going to make sure he's not going to get nominated. The Hollywood Foreign Press is a joke. The Golden Globes is a joke. So let's just get that out of the way. But if I were them, even though I hate their guts, if I were them, I would understand, and I would also not invite Ricky Gervais back to host the Golden Globes again next year. Anyway, that's my whole rant for now. Agree or disagree? I'm open for discussion. I'm not going to die for these beliefs, but I'm open for discussion. Leave them in the comment sections below. For JohnCampea.net, I'm John Campea.